Don't make me do tech.
You always mess with me. Oh, hey, we are live. What's going on, gang?
Nothing.
Hey, it's TJ Knudsen and Tony Darnell, best friends. However, we also appreciate freight. And don't shake your head, Tony. Gosh, man.
We're acquaintances.
Best acquaintances ever. Except when he calls me when he needs something. Right. And I do the same thing. Anyways, so I was just telling Beth, a lot of times I find the guests on the show, because Tony's usually on a forklift or yelling at drivers for not sliding their tandems all the way back. But he's the one that reached out to me and said, hey, we got to get this Beth on. So I looked at it a little bit. I love seeing something, like driver recruiting, in which it's kind of always the same, because even the norm people can't hardly hit. It's hard for people even to find somebody to even hit what they're expected, let alone go disrupt it and change it and do something totally different to make it better. So I thought it was a great idea, and I can't wait to hear what Beth says. So let's get Beth.
Hold on, let me give you the background. So we were at TMSA together, and I saw her, and we did the shippers panel immediately after Jared Orton from the president of the Savannah Bananas spoke. And it was just, it could have been Jason Lippert delivering the speech, the way he was fans first and creating fans, and we're customer centric, creating customers. And it was so very much the same culture and ideology of how we want to run the company and with our customers and team members first over monetary goals and objectives, because those are results of doing it this way first. And it was really interesting. And she approached me after the shipping panel and said, that is so cool that you said that, because and then we hit it off. And then I ran into her at the airport and I gave her a big hug because I'm a hugger and she's awesome. And we just talked, and we've been talking since, and it's been really cool and really neat. And I wanted to make sure that we got her to come out here, because I've been doing this for basically my entire life, adult life. And even my dad was doing this before. And I just have never, and she's been doing this a long time differently, and I've just never heard of it. And I wanted to see if I couldn't get you out in front of more people so that we could at least tell people what it is that you do and why it's not the same as everyone else being a driver recruiter.
Yeah. And Beth, so I'm going to give you a minute here to go into what you do and everything. And I think if correct me if I'm wrong, and this may be a good segue into what you're going to say here, but Tony is passionate about, he has his own fleet, right? And so it's not just recruiting, but it's retention and that driver engagement and things like that. So, whether it's a lot of times you see recruiters are hired directly with a certain company, right? And they're hiring just for that. Okay. And I think that has its benefits, right? But at the same time, I think the pressure, of course, then to get somebody into that company can lead to maybe some false promises, right? Some things that are a little bit more deceiving just because it's your job. You have to do it. You got a quota. And so if I'm seeing this correctly, the benefit to you is, the ability to look at everything from, what it is you want to do, whether you want to be an owner op on your own, work for a company, be a company driver, be whatever it is. And let's segue into that. And you give us the background then on what you got going and how that relates.
Yeah. Thanks for both of you for having me on today. It's exciting. So I'm here in Northeast Ohio. Beth Potras, the founder and CEO for Drive My Way. So I come from a human resources background and kind of grew up in supply chain logistics, servicing all those types of clients in HR. And back in the late 90s, when the war for talent was coined, I was trying to recruit engineers to move to Cleveland, Ohio. And I quickly realized that employers were going to start to need to view employees as consumers in the employment relationship, because your needs change all throughout your career depending on where you're at. So fast forward, I was actually redesigning a driver recruiting process for a really large carrier in the later years, and thought to myself, this is the perfect application for my idea. So we're really set out to making hiring personal again by doing just that, treating the driver as a consumer. In today's day and age, everybody's expecting a personalized experience in everything we do, even going to Starbucks to order coffee, right? So why shouldn't that include finding a job? So we're kind of coming at it a very different way. We've developed a proprietary and patented technology that matches truck drivers with jobs based on the driver's professional qualifications and their personal lifestyle preferences. So think of things like type of haul, type of run, type of schedule, whether or not they want to travel with their pet, certain types of benefits they're looking for, and so on. So we're really, passionate about the fact that, drivers are literally stalked, and so sought after, and they're looking for a certain opportunity, right, that they can actually join and have a career that they can grow with an organization. So they're looking for fit just as much as the carrier is. And we decided it was a good time to introduce this technology combined with personalized services, to help match drivers up with jobs that will allow them to live the life they want. So that's what we're doing.
And if I read it correctly, this platform that you have now, how because I really feel like when you're on the road, and you're driving, and I've dealt with driver recruiting. I mean, like when I was running the fleet, their circle, it was like the hardest part was keeping my safety department liking or in good cahoots with my recruiter, because it was like they were wanting to stall everything that she wanted to bring in, but at the same time it's probably for a good reason, right? Because our safety department knew what they were doing. So it was like one of those things that is kind of back and forth, but you're on the road and you see these on the back of every truck, hey, if you wanted to come drive, and I feel like a lot of times it's just drivers don't have the right resources or the right ways in which they can find more than one to choose from. And I kind of went through the same thing in my career. Really, it was one of those things where I had a lot of people reaching out to me, and instead of taking the time to really sort through what was a good fit, you kind of jump on what pays well or what you go with, and you don't take the time to do it. So this platform, that the access to it, and the ease of it, because I feel like for drivers a lot of times that's the biggest thing is it's just another thing I got to do, and if it's too hard, I'm not going to do it. What do you guys do to facilitate that?
Yeah, it's actually really simple. So a driver creates a profile for free. The technology pushes real-time matches to them. If they're a match and a carrier is interested in speaking with them, they'll get notified, so they can act on their own, literally just by clicking a button to share their profile and express interest, giving the carrier permission then to get in touch. And second, a matchmaker may reach out to them to give them a call and let them know, because they're driving, they're busy. We make them aware of who is interested in speaking with them, and then they can make the decision.
And I think that's key. That's what I like the most about it, is that having somebody that can kind of facilitate it for you. And here's the thing, and there's a lot of people that want to say, drivers aren't that smart. Man, I know some drivers that are as smart as it gets. And there's different types of smarts. There's street smarts and there's other types. But some that don't speak English. There's some that don't know a ton about anything but driving. There's some that have a lot of other things going on outside of just driving, and to sit down and take the time and sort through. And it can kind of your brain can kind of be like, I don't even know what to pick. But so having somebody, call and say, hey, I just want to talk with you a little bit. This is what's offered. This is what I think about this. This is what you think about. I think that's and drivers, I tell you this, drivers will pay for something that makes their job easier and makes their life easier. They're not against that, because I know drivers that have complained about money, and the next thing you know, they're out buying a Polaris RZR that's going to sit at their house, and they're only going to drive once every 3 months. You know what I mean? Like because it's something that, when they get back, they can go out and ride the trails and release whatever it is. But they'll spend money on it if they know what they're getting and they know there's some value to it. So for me, I think that's the best part. And I think, Tony's company too, they try to really do that, from the standpoint of most of the guys are local, I'd say, right, Tony?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right. So they've already got an idea, and they already know that, hey, if we have a good reputation, those are big things for us being an Elkhart. Lippert's the big dog, right? But when you're out there and you're dealing with guys across the U.S., which I'm sure you guys deal with, how important and how much do people take advantage of those matchmakers?
Oh, they definitely do. In fact, the matchmaker is a really unique role, right? I mean, our value proposition to the drivers, we're going to get them in direct contact with the hiring manager as long as they're interested in the job. So they can have a very open conversation with a matchmaker and ask all the questions. We get into extreme detail about the offerings. What is a driver eligible for? When do they become eligible for it? What do they have to do to get it? So they're generally asking a lot of their questions up front before they're going to invest their time and talk to the organization. And they can have, sort of those conversations with the matchmaker who's neutral of, hey, what if I'm on an SAP? Is there anybody that's going to work with me? What should I do if I'm looking for this type of a role? Is that even out there and available? So they really, trust the matchmakers and build relationships with them over time, because they're hearing from them on a fairly regular basis.
I like the fact that you guys are considering yourselves as matchmakers instead of placement, because placement happens by the HR team, as you know, but anybody can post a job and have candidates that are qualified apply, especially when driving. But there's so many like sub niches in driving. Everybody wants to say, CDLA, you're qualified to drive this. But there's live bottom trailers, there are belt trailers, tank trailers, dry vans, reefers, flatbeds, step decks, low boy, dump trailers, frame dump, endless end dump, belly dump, side dump. There's just, Conestoga cover wagon. There's just a million different kinds of trucking out there. And if people are looking for the right role in the right spot, and you can match those up 1-to-1, your success rate has got to be really high compared to just a company X with a driver looking for a guy with a CDL.
And that's a great point, Tony, because it's not easy. Because there's a lot of power only guys. Imagine being a power only guy and then saying, hey, I got to find somewhere do I know how to do work with a walking floor, with a Conestoga, the curtain side, with a low boy, with anything over dimensional, with anything like that. And so it's like, you can look at and see what they prompt, but you know as well as I do, those recruiters that are putting it out there, everything's going to look beautiful, everything's going to look great. You're going to get in there, and I don't even know how many times I had our own drivers come in and be like, "This is not what I signed up for. This is not what I thought I was told." And
right.
And how do you get that? But I think like what Beth is saying is having somebody to talk with you and say, hey, let's talk about what we want or what we want to do. And I guess my big thing is too, you look at I know it's probably been a process, because trying to find match, right, and having those right questions and things, like you look at Carrier Sure, with like Cassandra, she puts it together, great idea, and she already knows that she's patient about it, because it's going to take time. You're going to have to adjust the algorithms. You're going to have to adjust some things as you go. How long have you guys been around, and are you guys still doing that to make sure that the questions asked and the profiles are matching correctly with what exactly they would want?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've been at this since July of 2016, July 1st. So we just had our anniversary. Okay. Yeah, so it's not our first rodeo. We've been around for a while. And it's exciting because we continue to evolve, right, preferences and requirements. So for example, when COVID happened, we had some segments, and one in particular was concert halling, for example. Okay. And there was a requirement that the driver had to be vaccinated. The talent required the driver to be vaccinated. Well, that wasn't a profile question that we ever had before, right? That was something new that came up. So as new things develop and evolve, we continue to evolve the questions that are asked in the profile, questions about lifting, people's ability, to do on and off deliveries. Are you willing to load and unload? Do you just prefer drop and hook or bump and docks? All of these kinds of preferences are things that we get into the details on. We've got drivers that won't even look at a job unless it's a certain age truck or type of truck. They don't want anything to do with it. If their speed's going to be governed, they want to know that up front, because they may not be interested in that as well. So we get into a lot of details that, if you think about it, they deserve to know those answers and what they can expect up front, because that's their, this is like their office, that's their job. So
And,
we
and
want
I'm
to
here,
about the surprises.
and I'm here to tell you, as an experienced guy who's interviewed, I mean, probably 100 truck drivers over time, that as a truck driver, as a guy who used to drive a truck for a living, you can ask HR all those questions. They don't know. HR, they don't know. I mean, maybe at an outright trucking company, the HR and the hiring people might know some of those, but like at a manufacturing plant, like where I work with trucks, our HR people come to me for help with the application process, because it's so much different for a driver than it is for a team member that's just going to be not DOT sensitive role. So the fact that you're taking this over and going to the extremes with the details is just really cool. I love everything about this.
Think about how much that's so, I couldn't talk about it much at the time, when I'm overseeing a fleet and I see, but we would have guys that would come in for orientation, and we're in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I mean, you'd have to drive. I mean, some of these guys have to drive quite a ways, right? To come in and spend 3, 4, 5 days. And it wouldn't be till 3 days in where it'd be like, hey, well, no, the way your truck's built, or some of these guys were a little bit out there, where it's like, okay, you can't have a 2x4 holding your seat up, or, things like, I don't know. But what I'm saying is,
I've seen milk crates.
But I'm saying though, is like, I always thought to myself, like, man, these guys traveled, however far to come here empty, and come here and spend 3, 4, 5 days in orientation, and then just to get denied on details that they could have known. But I think a lot of times recruiters say, well, just come in and we'll see, come on in and we'll see, right? Because it's part of their quota. And so, the amount of money, the amount of time, and the amount of capacity then that is lost too as well, because these guys aren't on the road for, if they do end up going through, maybe it's 2 weeks worth of orientation. Who knows how it ends up going? But those types of things, and it costs the company money, because a lot of times you got to pay for their meals or things like that as well. And all these details aren't established, because again, in sales there's quotas and there's things that you got to keep going. And when the recruiting's tough, especially, as a recruiter in your mind, you're like, I just want to keep things moving, people through the door, whether they're good or not. I just needed my boss to see that I'm keeping people through the door, and that hurts everybody then.
Yep.
Right. That's where the retention piece is important, right? Because it's two-sided. You can't just be rewarded and recognized on getting them in. You have to get the right person in the seat, and they need to be wanting that opportunity and willing to stay. So they have to come in eyes wide open, and you need to strike that relationship. It may be the right job, the right expectations, but the wrong culture. It really has to be a fit all the way around, but the driver has to be really clear about what are their non-negotiables, what are the things that they're willing to do and not willing to do. And the carrier needs to be very, very clear as well in terms of what they're looking for from the driver in terms of expectations. What can I expect my dispatch time to be? Am I going to be expected to work overtime, or holidays going to be required? Whatever it is, depending on the job type.
How far do you guys go with it? Because, when I sit back and look at it, I saw a lot of times that, and I think the system that we had too is different than others, right? There's a lot of different ones. But, when we brought on owner operators, okay, and we had a dispatch team, and you basically got assigned to a dispatcher. He would assign you company loads that we had, right? And then find you backhauls back. But a lot of times that didn't mesh. They didn't mesh with them. And you don't find that out, so you get in, you look at driver turnover, you get in, everything's good, you're good to go, you get with your dispatcher, and you don't like him, right? And then you move on to another one. You don't necessarily like him. Well, you already got a bad taste in your mouth, right? And now you're looking around again. So how far do you guys go with the actual, helping of figuring that out? I mean, because I always thought, one of the best things that we could do before we even bring them in for orientation is go through everything that we have and have them talk to dispatchers, like on the phone, and say, hey, this is what we do. This is how I find you freight. This is my strategy and how I do things. Is that something that you'd be good with? And then you kind of talk with each one. And as a driver, you should be able to pick, instead of just be assigned which dispatcher you go with, right? We had an older guy who related with the older guys, and they were always just kind of slow moving and everything, and then we had a younger guy that was like, boom, 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 boom. right? And the young guys that want to run was a great match. And so I found myself having to figure that out. But sometimes it was too late by the time some of these guys don't want to sit around and as soon as they get pissed off, they're gone. And so, how far do you guys go with that?
Yeah, so we don't have, we encourage the company when they're at the interview process to really allow them the opportunity to talk to the hiring manager, the dispatcher if they're available, the driver, if there's a driver retention manager. We also use, when we're advertising for the organization, their own drivers to tell the story of what it's like to work there, because there's a lot of credibility, right? When another driver talks about what it's like.
Right.
And they don't just talk about, oh, they treat us like family, we're not a number. They give tangible examples. My dispatcher got me home when I had to go to my kid's recital, and it was really important that I got there. Those type of, where they're willing to work with you, they show the proof by giving the example. Those things go a long way. But just like for all of us, typically the quality of your manager is generally in the top 3 reasons why people will leave a company. Yep. And dispatcher's right up there for the driver. I mean, yep. It's their lifeline, right, to the yep. organization. So they really have to be able to get along with that person. Unfortunately, too often they don't meet them till the very end of the process.
Yep, very end. I mean,
it's already a done deal, and now they're in it, and then they're And you don't usually get to choose your dispatcher.
No, and I think it's very important too. One thing I try to do too, as we kind of tweak the process, was talk to them one-on-one and be like, hey, listen, I want you to know that you've got an escalation process. If this dispatcher's not doing what he's supposed to do, you can call my cell phone anytime.
Yep.
And I'll take care of you. I used to dispatch. I'll get you taken care of. We'll find you somebody else. And having them talk to other drivers is also a good thing too, because you get the idea of what they've dealt with, when it comes to it. However, I also find, that I think that, like you said, you may not have that happen, but just letting them know that like your best bet is to talk with each dispatcher, right? Like your best bet is to talk with each dispatcher, talk with each one of them, so that you understand what they're doing. And then also, not only that, but I will tell you, recruiters, when they look in the system and they look at rates, right? Stuff that we're running, they look at the average rate and the way they average it in fuel. And then you go to a dispatcher, he's like, well, right now, it's tough to put that, like they're in like the now, right? Like they're looking at TMS data, they're looking at like what's going on or has been happening. And like that current situation is really the key, and I think there's a lot of times that, drivers, don't understand that going into it, of like understanding, the market. And then also the different, I don't know how much you guys explain this to them, or if you guys do education from this standpoint, but like, you come in as an owner operator and you're going to make 75%.
Yeah.
Okay. Or you're going to make 65%, or you're going to make 85%. And I always tell these guys, they're like, I go somewhere else and make 75%. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like it's all a wash, because they're paying for your plates. They're paying for something else that evens it out. Right. And these guys sometimes just don't understand that. They just see 75%. And they think I'm getting 75%, but then they have to pay for all the extras that the company doesn't pay for.
Or it's 75% of line haul, but then fees for permits and paperwork and all of the other stuff is just 100% margin.
And how do they break their fuel out? Because there's a lot of companies that determine their own fuel. They're just like, hey, we're at 35 cents a mile. That's what we've been at. Whatever, we may change it here and there, but that's what we're at, and we stay at that no matter what the market does.
Yeah, owner operators are tough, because you really need to level set everything. You need to find out how they've been running. What have they been exposed to? What's their process been? Mm-hmm. And kind of how long have they been doing it? And then you'll understand how you need to orient them to your way, right? So if they've been just going to load boards on their own, how have they been going about it? If they're leasing on with you, have they done that before? How has that worked? Because they come in with, any driver comes in with expectations. Mm-hmm. It's usually formulated from their previous experiences, the good and the bad, right? Mm-hmm. So you'll have to make those connections to your environment and what fits and what doesn't, so that you don't have people disappointed.
And it's key with owner ops, because I've had guys that come in and like, right off the bat, they were told when they first started driving that, don't ever drive empty. Don't ever drive empty. And I'm talking to a guy that he makes, 350 mile going out to the east side of PA. Okay. And anything you find out of the east side of PA is either heavy and it's cheap. Right. And so I still remember this example, and it's a dispatcher, and I'm like, hey, I'm a deadhead you 150 miles west to grab this load. It's way lighter because a lot of the tolls out PA are on weight too.
Yeah.
So it's way lighter. You can grab it. And this is your total miles back to the same customer to get another good paying load. So here's your total miles. This is what it pays. This is your per mile then, right? Which is higher than grabbing a load that's 10 miles from you and it being super heavy and paying cheap. You're actually going to make more money. And the guy just wouldn't understand. He just couldn't get it. He's like, I'm not deadheading 150 miles. You're not making me deadhead. And it was so hard to in my head for me to explain that to him that man, are you not understanding this? I'm giving you the total miles from where you're at right now to where you need to be. You either pick up a load here or you pick up a load 150 or halfway even. That's twice as much or 3 times as much as this one. And you get to run empty half the time. And it's hard for them to understand it because of their previous experiences or what they've been told. And I think that's where a lot of recruiters bang their head on the wall sometimes too, because it's hard for them to get it across because these guys get very stuck in their ways.
Well, and it's they fixate on one particular thing, and it's really, you have to look at the collection or the total comp, the total collection of things, and the sum of the parts, because somebody will fixate on CPM, how much am I going to get, they immediately, well, this one pays higher than this one. Well, that's great if it does, but if you're going to be sitting a lot and you're going to be waiting to be loaded and unloaded, you're not rolling, you're not making any money. So I don't care if it's 50 cents more per mile, you're not running, so it doesn't matter. So you really have to think about even the commute, just how do I get there? How do I get home? How often am I getting home? All the extras that I'm having to put into it. Is it worth it? So you have to teach them sort of how to compare things apples to apples when you kind of line everything up.
And it's beautiful. It is so beautiful when you find a driver, because I had drivers, because we were getting, again, like I said, those loads going to PA and stuff. We would get these, and sometimes it'd be 350, 450 a mile. These guys that knew what they were doing, they'd run them and they just turn and burn. They said, don't worry about getting me a load. I'm not wasting time at a shipper, right, to get loaded with 45,000 pounds of water, right, to run back at $1.10 a mile, right, that I'm getting 65% of, when I could just turn and burn, go back and get another if I could get 4 of those loads in a week, this is what I'm making, right? Over me sitting here and waiting and taking time.
Because they're considering time, fuel efficiency, cost of the weight, all of the factors that, it's money in, money out. And they learn over time. Unfortunately, they get burned a lot.
And getting them to, and that's where I think what you said earlier, getting the other drivers to talk with them, I think is key. Getting other drivers to talk with them and say, hey, this is how we're doing. This is how you succeed in this system, and with the freight that we have. This is how I'm able to succeed. I think it's so key. And I talked to Tony too, about this. When you look at sales, everyone wants to talk about sales, and how do I talk to a potential shipper about the difference between, and I love using this phrase, the difference between committed capacity and capacity. Capacity I can pull from anywhere. Right? I could say I've got 15,000 trucks. I could say I can do this, I can do that, right? But does that driver want to stay in that lane? Does he actually want to run it? Is he going to give dispatch a hard time? Does he not like the back hauls, right? And like you said there before, a lot of times I talk to shippers and say, hey, once we get some freight on the board and we get things moving, I'm able to go to people and say, hey, this is what we have, right? So you want to be home through the house to keep your wife happy every single night. This is what we have. Right? You want to be home every other weekend because your son has baseball games. This is what we have. And those are things then now you've got people that want to stay on those lanes. Drivers want to stay on those lanes because it keeps their lifestyle and their personal things where it needs to be. And shippers sometimes don't see the difference between those two. And that's a capacity that stays with you. And that's a capacity you create around their freight. So shippers can come out and say, hey, I want somebody who has capacity, but what capacity are you getting? Really, at the end of the day, are you really getting somebody committed to it? Are you looking at somebody that's going to just jump to the next load after because they're bitching at their dispatcher all the time? Like we could just say, hey, oh, new account. We're gonna take 4 drivers and put it on it. They're bitching about it. Whatever. We have to do it for the customer. Okay. Well, how long is that gonna last? Right? When you can really recruit around somebody's freight, I think that's the key to creating that consistent and reliable capacity that these shippers really need.
Well, and looking at the network of all your lanes and everything, because as people's needs change, let's say I'm in a custody agreement now, something's changed. I need to consider then, well, what are the other offerings that I have that I might be able to move a few things around,
Yeah.
Well, Beth, I know that like, TJ, you don't know this, but I have already listened to the demonstration with Beth before, and that's why I was 100% sold on it. The idea, the concept, and I love it. But tell us, I mean, we know in trucking, like typically the turnover is right around 100%. Tell us some of your metrics that you shared with me when we were on that call.
Yeah. So the biggest metric that we can point to is that, everybody else out there is, it's a job board, they're an agency, it's a job aggregator, it's all this lean in, post and pray. I need, 10 of these, 20 of those. It's, we're hiring all kinds of drivers everywhere. We get down to very specific details, even down to, does the driver live within your specific hiring radius of a particular address? And that really allows us to have drivers that come in because they control who sees their profile, and they trust that we're only going to send them things they're qualified for and that already fit what they said they're looking for. They give us the time. And when they engage, when they express interest, they're genuinely interested. It's a real person. It's not a database. It's not,
Right.
A bunch of leads that everybody's schlepping around to each other.
Well, let me stop you there for a quick second. But one of the things I loved about this as a guy with a CDL is it puts me in charge.
Mhm.
I'm no longer succumbed to what's out there and what's available. I am in charge of my profile. I am in charge of who I allow to see it. If I don't want my employer to know I'm looking for another gig, I can make sure that they don't see it. I love the fact that it puts the CDL guy, the driver, in charge, because
Yeah.
99 times out of 100, that is the person who wants to run this. And I
Or that gal.
Yes.
She's like her, if any person. So for every 23 drivers that express interest across our platform, one of them is getting hired. That is a very highly engaged driver. People are getting hired. We're working with carriers as we, transition data, and we follow a driver all the way through the various disposition levels throughout their funnel, and they convert. We're also tracking retention, because we believe a better fit up front is going to result in greater retention down the road. So everybody's got to break this paradigm that, it's a volume. Everybody's got this, I'm busy, I've got the right volume. They're playing it like it's a numbers game. Well, it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 to go through, if there's only 10 in the 1,000 that were even really worth your time.
Yep.
What if I gave you 10 and you hired 4 of them? Isn't that a better use of your time to zero? But people get nervous, because they're used to, the old way of doing things, and
Right.
they're used to activity equals value, and that's not necessarily the case.
And you know what? I love that you said that, because it used to drive me nuts, and it still does, because I tell you what, if you don't have retention, none of it matters. So
Exactly.
be a recruiter, and you can get people in and you can get them hired. And if you can't retain them, you're losing 3 people, you're gaining 3 people. You're losing 3 people, you're gaining 3 people. At the end of the day, your numbers that people are looking at are not what you're adding, right? It's not what you're adding. The fact of the matter is you're still at 100 drivers. You went to 103, now you're back to 100. You hired 3, cool. Now you're 103. Then you lose 3, then you're back to 103. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the whole point of it is to gain your driver base and gain, give your company a reason to get more trucks, to get more trailers. And it never made sense to me why retention wasn't such a bigger thing than what it was. It was just all about, we recruit well. Well, it doesn't matter. It's still to this day, it's basic math.
It's like
not,
sales,
I'm not the
right?
smartest guy in the world. I haven't been in the industry but 10 years. And I'm sitting here going, I'm talking to some of these people that have been in it for 30, and I'm going, what? Like, what are you doing?
It's no different than sales.
The same.
Right? You
Exactly.
sold it. If you can't retain that customer, well, what's the point?
Yeah, go land as many customers as you want. You'll lose every one of them because you can't follow through with what you said you could do. Right? Hey, I can handle all your freight. I can handle all your freight. Right? And then all of a sudden you can't. And then what? I can land customers right and left. Okay, cool. What's that make you? What's that do for you? That's wasted time. That's wasted money. If anything, you're costing the company money. But you're keeping your quota where you need it. You're keeping your numbers where you need it. And until people start thinking this way and start thinking about the big picture and what the company really needs, what's best for it, that's what you're judged on. Because I'm sorry, but these owners, I've sat in these meetings, man. And I was blessed to be able to do this, but we've sat in these meetings and I'm like, I remember thinking to myself, like, this guy really thinks he's killing it. Right? But I'm sitting here listening to my owners talk about what they care about and what this guy's doing compared to what they care about. And yes, we have expectations on him for certain things, but that's just track metrics. But at the end of the day, it's what the owners care about. It's what the people want to keep you around for. And when it comes down to market downturns and things that change, and they think who's expendable, you're expendable. It doesn't matter what your numbers are if you're not hitting what the bigger picture is. And if you don't think that way, and if you're only thinking about your numbers, it's just going to hurt you.
Yeah. And you have to be willing. So one of the other things that we do is, you put your offering out there and a driver can choose whether or not they're interested. If they decline the invitation, that's a person who was qualified, who matched because they're interested in what you have to offer in terms of their preferences, but they don't want to talk to you. Well, why? Why are they not going to express interest? We'll collect those reasons. And now you can start seeing some themes. Now you know how your offering is landing on people. And if you're getting, feedback on the company's reputation, we get a lot of feedback on the quality of the equipment, the state of the equipment. If they think your stuff's, the certain logos are always on the side of the road, broken down, all that stuff gets out there and then they give feedback. If it's pay and you're getting consistent feedback on the pay level of certain geographies, maybe you need to be doing a pay study. So that's invaluable. But if you keep throwing the same thing at the wall and you're not willing to listen to the feedback, you're having turnover for some of those same reasons. Or as you mentioned earlier, turnover because, the person got in and said, hey, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what you told me it was going to be like. You promised me X number of miles or whatever, and that hasn't been the case. Well, now you have a bigger problem. So you have to make sure that what you're presenting is what you're actually living up to and delivering. And if what you're presenting isn't landing on people, you need to be big enough to say, okay, let me listen, educate me, tell me what would make it more attractive to you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can't deliver on those, you just can't.
Yeah, and it's that connection. I've always appreciated. Tony's heard me probably over and over. I don't know if he necessarily understands because it's different in our world, but the connection between sales and operations is so key, and the connection between recruiting and operations is so key. I've always said, if you're a sales guy, go sit with operations. If you're a recruiter, go sit with operations, because you can't promise. And if you're promising X, and then you send them off to the dispatchers, and the dispatchers don't even know what you promised them.
Yeah.
Right now, you got to take that call. Right? And this guy's going, you motherfuckers promised me that you give me this and that. And you're going, why would we promise you that? This is what we do. Why would we ever you don't even know what's going on. You know what I mean? There's no connection there at all. And there's got to be one, because if not, it's just going to be a mess.
Well, and TJ, it goes all the way down the line on anybody that is, you have to look at it as the entire candidate experience. Anybody that's involved in that process from start to finish. And you mentioned the disconnect between the recruiter and operations, and the recruiter doesn't have those answers. Well, it's really your job to make sure that the recruiter, and they have to take an interest, they're out there representing you and your opportunity and supposed to be screening people so that they're worth your time to interview. You need to make it your business to make sure they understand your full operation. Mm-hmm. And all the nuances, because if they can't properly articulate the expectations to the driver, you're already in a bad situation.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the $1 million question. Hold on.
You guys run with this. I got to take this call real fast.
All right. Okay. Hey, logistics never stop. So I'm going to ask you the $1 million question, and I know the answer that I will tell you. My answer is absolutely no. But is there a driver shortage? If not, why? If so, why? What are your thoughts? Because you're probably way more qualified to answer this than I am. But
I honestly, as we've gone through this, and of course, things are changing and regulations, etc. Um, I honestly believe there is a driver shortage. In that, when I say driver shortage, I'm talking about the overall career of truck driver. And I'm going all the way back down to even non-CDL required positions.
okay,
This next generation coming up, truck driver used to be the number one job across the United States. Before that, it was farmer. I actually
yeah,
think truck driver still is, to be honest. Now, there's a couple states where software developer took over, but truck driver still is a primary career out there. Yet this next generation that's coming up, they've seen their parents, their grandparents, aunts and uncles, they've seen them all, miss family events, be out on the road, and they've seen what a tough life it can be. The issue is that there's so much education that needs to take place as early as possible, and even mid-career for people considering career changes. There is literally a work out there for everyone. You name it. If you don't have your CDL yet, fine. There's non-CDL positions. There's ways for you to get involved and try it out to even see if you're cut out for it. You can be a truck driver, but you maybe not cut out for over the road, right? That takes a special type of a person.
right,
So it depends on what your motivation is going into it, and just educating people on. There's a million, as you mentioned, different types of trucks. There's a million different segments. There's a million different types of routes, schedules, home time, you name it, any combination, for hire carriers, private fleets. Pretty much anything that you want to do is out there and available. Even I was on Road Dog yesterday. We are talking about really having trouble finding drivers. When you start talking about, you're looking for a team drivers, and they have to have hazmat, and they have to have a quick card, they're crossing borders, and they're hauling explosives. I mean, now you're getting to the golden needle in the haystack of needles of, that's like the highest level of, risk. All the way back down to a local box truck driver, making local deliveries. So, and everything in between. So there's a lot out there. I do think it's a shortage in that, in the future, there's going to continue to be a need. And we've seen in Final Mile, the needs continue to skyrocket down to the point now where they're supplementing with, independent contract drivers driving their own vehicles to deliver things local.
yeah,
And it doesn't even need to be Amazon orders. It could be anything, lab supplies, you name it, auto parts. So it's a very real problem. And it's only going to continue to grow. And we need to make sure that we're, offering and educating folks on what's out there and available so that they know they can live the life they want. And these are jobs that they can love. We just have to educate them and match them up to all the right opportunities. So in that regard, I definitely think there is a shortage. They'll continue to grow to be a shortage unless we do more and more about it, and getting people who want to make career changes and getting them involved earlier in their career.
right. I agree with your answer. I always say no because there's plenty of opportunity for places where they treat drivers better than where you hear the horror stories, obviously. And I think the shortage of places that can't keep drivers employed are because they either have poor hiring, they don't use your service, or they're promising something that just isn't true, or the culture doesn't fit, or whatever. But as a driver, I know that with my MVR being blank, it's literally spotless and clean. When I pull it, they're like, this page is intentionally left blank. That they'll say you can go anywhere you want, and I'm like, I know, but I don't want to go anywhere. I want to go to the right someplace. So I love what you're doing. This is why I had to have you on here, because I absolutely love what you're doing, and I love the fact that it puts the driver in control and it matches up what I want to do. And a lot of times as a driver, I wasn't ready to put that on paper yet. and you know, it was, geez, before the internet. I wasn't ready to define what it was that I wanted to do as a driver. And the way you pull a profile and it, you know, make somebody, it's almost like writing goals down. It's almost
Did
like
you go
setting,
do it? Remember, you said you have your CDL. I told
yeah,
you to go out there and make a profile.
I'm
He
going
thinks
to.
he's
You
still
can
a
send me
driver.
the link.
Don't encourage him, Beth. He thinks he's still a driver.
Well, I told him he better, if he does it, he's going to get immediately contacted. So he better tell me, because otherwise he's going to start getting offers to check out jobs.
I think once a driver, always a driver, though, right, Tony?
Oh yeah, it never goes away. The guys that a lot of guys let their CDL go and then they go back to having just a regular license. Every one of those guys, except for like 3, will tell you, dumbest thing I ever did. I wish I would have kept my CDL. And I'm right now. I'm in the process. I filled out an application last week actually at work to get on the insurance because we lease our trucks from Penske and we're on an industrial park that's a loop like this.
Yeah.
And Penske's on the top of the loop and we're on the bottom of the loop, and it's like I can almost see them across the street, but I'd have to go that quarter mile around the loop to where their plant is. And that would just be so convenient to my fleet, my guys, if I could run over there and pick up their truck.
Right. Yeah, that would be.
Just little things like that where I can make their life better.
Yeah.
But I can't go out on the road without being on the insurance. And I can't be on the insurances unless I'm listed as a driver. And I can't be a driver unless I have a qualified driver file. So I'm just going to get my CDL renewed because my birthday is next month and I have to renew it anyway. So I'm going to get on the insurance, renew my DOT physical, and get everything going so that I can be listed at Lippert as a driver so that I can just go that extra mile for my guys so that they'll want to stay because I want retention as well.
Yeah, no. And you just mentioned the physical is another piece. I mean, you also can't ignore the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse and the impact that has had on taking drivers out of the network.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. I mean, so again, the driver shortage, is it real? I really do think it is, and it's only going to continue to grow as
and you know, you look at, I feel like, you know, you look at, you know, I swear, man, America, you know, people want to question a lot of things, but the reason we've been so great economically as we've developed is because we're always kind of ahead of things. And so a lot of these electronic, you know, these trucks, these things that they're wanting to go, you know, with you know, driverless
autonomous trucks.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily because they want to replace drivers. It's because they see it coming, you know, and they do, and they, you know, it's like farmers, you know, there's less and less, you know, the son used to take over for the father, you know, and continue to farm, and that's not happening as much anymore. Same thing with drivers. You know, now there's a lot of foreigners that come in, and because of the technology and the people that are adapting, you know, it's allowing them to fulfill that. But at the end of the day, it used to be, you know, if my dad was a driver, I'm a driver. That's what we know. That's what we do. We take pride in it, you know, and even the trades in general are really just anything hard work wise is going down because everything's made so much easier. So, you know, I think it's just something that they know is coming, you know, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing. You know, a farmer who continues to farm has an advantage now, right? Because there's less farmers. And that means that people that own land and have property will let you farm their land for them. Right, because
they've evolved their skill set, though, right? Because the tools they used to use to do that, they're not able to anymore, and their only way to survive is evolve. But that's why we have to prepare these drivers. Excuse me, the autonomous trucks. Yes, they're coming. The technology is already here. It's the same as, you know, autopilot in an airplane. We've had the technology for years, but nobody's getting in an airplane that's not being driven by a pilot sitting in the cockpit at some point.
Thank you. Because you know as well as I do that these guys would rather. So if you continue to be a driver, you still have the advantage. It's not like you wouldn't get hired. It's not like you're going to be replaced. People would still rather see a human being pull up in the truck, be able to talk to them about what's going on with it, than have something than just a truck pull by itself.
But their skills have got to change though, because now they're monitoring. They're in charge of monitoring a machine. They're going to be, you know, having to provide information. They're going to be having to make split-second decisions. They're going to be having to have more customer interaction, more involvement in the process where they may not do those tasks today. They will change, and we have to be prepared to help those people become the drivers of the future.
Yep. Yeah, and I think Ingrid Brown said it the best. A lot of these guys, they come in, they don't know how to get a shower at the truck stop. They don't know how to do these things. And she's like, what it used to be was you had somebody take you under their wing and teach you these things, and
Right.
give you the ins and outs. And these
You could run with somebody for a while.
It's kind of like I liken it to school. Of course, my kids are older now, so they've been out of school. But I remember sitting in the grade school with the new math and all this stuff. And I thought, we've got to teach people how to do the basics, like, do long division. You need to know how to, like, you may not use it, but you may have to fall back on it. And it's kind of like that now, like where everybody's coming out of school and nobody knows how to drive a manual transmission.
And nobody knows how to balance a checkbook.
Yeah, I mean,
I never understand that. You could take trigonometry, you could take calculus, you could take all these classes, but nobody teaches basic finance.
Yes.
Right? Balancing a checkbook, how to actually look at what your student loans and what that 25% interest means. All these things that could actually help people when they get out in the real world. It's not being taught.
I mean, you could say, well, yes, of course, eventually we're going to be probably all automatic, manuals going away, but it doesn't matter. It's still here today. There's a lot of segments. I mean, look at ready mix cement, or look at, some waste and recycling. Some of it is just, it's not going away anytime soon.
Right.
It's something that people are still going to prefer. So you could say, hey, I'll get into something that's going to be the future. Well, what's going to happen is, I always thought a benefit would be stay in what's now. Because if everybody's pushing to get into what's in the future, people are still going to prefer what is happening now. And you're going to be one of the few. And you're going to have an advantage of it because you know the basics. You know how to do the things that people don't know how to do anymore because everything's done for you.
You have
and
to
when
know
they
how to
find
do
somebody, I'm telling you, I tell this to these drivers, man, the best drivers I know how to get out of their truck and make it happen. They know how to get out and they know how to do things that these other guys don't know how to do because everything's so manual nowadays. If you could get out and you could help a guy at the shipping dock, if you could help a guy at the receiving dock, if you can help a guy at the yard, at the repair shop, no matter what it is, you are in such an advantage. If you're going to be an owner operator, if you're going to be a driver, own it, right? And Tony used to mention
wear pants and safety glasses.
Nick Saban used to talk about even it doesn't matter what you do. If you're going to be a garbage man, be the best goddamn garbage man that there is. Know everything there is to know about it, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going to make your life easier, and then you can't sit back and complain that I don't get promoted or I don't make any money or anything. The thing is, it's on you, no matter what you're in. Yeah. But there are resources. Part of that is recognizing those. So things like what Beth offers, they're there. And I tell these guys, I tell this to salespeople all the time. When sales is tough, when recruiting is tough, reach out to other people. Do not be, one big thing that I went through that phase. And I've watched guys, man. I've watched them here in just the last year. From this last year in logistics, I've been on the phone with guys that call me, and they're just beat down. And I gave the advice before. And it was like, don't let LinkedIn go to your head. Don't let your success go to your head. I've had it happen to me, and it will ruin you because you're not humble enough to reach out to people for help. If you're a recruiter, right, and you're struggling, reach out to Beth, right? There's a resource right there.
Well, even if you're not, like what kills me is everybody always goes to their go-to playbook, and if hiring has slowed down for you right now, which for many people it has, then now's the time you should be out there exploring new ideas. Yes. When you go to your budget meeting this year, don't you want to have said, hey, I piloted something new and it worked? Mm-hmm. Hey, because if you're not willing to take a risk and try something new, you're always going to have the same result.
What's it cost to hire a driver on average?
Well, it depends. An owner operator can be up over, I don't know, 10, 12,000.
Yep.
So you can actually save them money, right?
Yep. Oh yeah, 100%. I've got people that are running with cost per hires under $500.
Yep.
That's
but
crazy. That's crazy.
It depends on the segment, right? And the type, of course.
But that's like two ads.
They're going to spend that money to hire a driver. Wouldn't they rather put that effort into a driver that Beth has already walked through and qualified?
Yeah.
Sure that's worth
you're talking about 2 targeted ads. and you're looking at you
Well,
could
yeah, your
already,
subscription, like the employers pay a subscription fee to use our services. We want you to hire as many as you can, but just hiring one or two, it pays for the subscription all by itself. I mean,
right.
it's kind of a no-brainer, but you have to be willing to stick it out. You have to be willing to, buy into the, quality over quantity.
Yeah.
That if the quality is there, it's okay. People get nervous. Like a recruiter wants to say, what am I going to do if I don't have 1,000 resumes to go through? Well,
Right.
what would you be doing with your time if you had, 10 that were spot on, and now you can spend
If
some
you
time
spend on
talking to the
retention.
drivers you just hired
It
or
can be spent on
nurturing.
retention.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Instead of going through 1,000 resumes, you can help make sure that those people stay.
Right.
Well, I've had companies that have been like, I've worked for companies that have been like, hey, we're not doing well. You know what? We're spending too much money on subscriptions. We're going to go to Craigslist because the owner, you worked for the owner back in the day, and my mind just explodes. I just can't even, I can't even fathom it, because it's like, you know what? You already aren't getting quality, and these subscriptions you're getting, you're just getting these people in, great. But then you're going to go to Craigslist because you think you're going to get more. You just need more. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, this cost per lead that everybody's doing, that's just a math problem, right?
Right.
I mean,
That's the same mentality as the brokerage with the quota of number of calls. It's dumb. Make 2 informed calls that generate business.
Tony, that's a great point, because I look at it and I think about it and I'm like, you know what? I've got 30 accounts in my name in HubSpot right now, and I'm gonna land 15 of them. I know people that got 300, 400, 500 accounts in their name.
Haven't
and they're
even
gonna land maybe 10, maybe 5, 10. And they're all the times put into it.
This
And
is exactly what Drive My Way does
It's
for
something
you.
you build to. Now, I'm not saying that from a cocky standpoint. It's something you build to.
Right.
So you could take the time and build to that. I always say, know your numbers, right? Know your yes to no's. You're going to start at, for every 100 reach outs, I get X amount of no's or X amount of yeses, whatever it is. That should start to lower, though, as you get better. Okay. But if there's somebody already out there that has it down and is doing that for you, then that's just efficiency. That's not, you can sit there and be stubborn and say, hey, this is my playbook, like what Beth just said. This is what it's always worked. I'm just going to work on it. Or you could go to somebody like Beth and say, hey, she's already got it down to where I'm going to give you 20 and you're going to hire 5 or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Because they're quality over quantity.
Yep.
And until people really get that down and understand it, and stop wasting their time, that's when time gets put in retention. I don't care if it's in driver recruiting. I don't care if it's in employee recruiting. I don't care if it's in customer prospecting. If you can't put time, because you could go land all the customers you want, but if you can't put time in with those decision makers and talk with them when things go wrong and can't be there when they want to reach out to you, it doesn't matter. None of it matters.
And the metrics too are all off, because everybody's like, oh, I've got the best cost per hire. Well, that's great, but I would be willing to bet that cost per hire is actually costing them more. They're not factoring in all that wasted time.
Yep.
Beth, this is why I knew you had to come on. We've been doing this show on and off for like 3 years, 3 or 4. What is it? I don't know what it is now, but 3 or 4 years. And I don't know if you can tell.
My beer?
Yeah. But we get really passionate about the same idea, the same concept of what you're doing. That's why TJ was just going off on a.
I go off on tangents. I do it, but so does Tony. Because you know what? There's not enough people in this industry that understand if you just do it right and be patient and be efficient, that you're better off. Because
that's why I knew you were a fit here.
There's so many easy ways out. There's so many easy ways to make money. I know so many people I've talked to. I don't know how many people. There's so many ways to make money. Right. And you think, oh, I'm going to do this because it's easier. And you know what? It burns you in the end because you can't actually follow through on what you say you're going to do and do it the right way.
That's right.
It gets me passionate. It gets Tony passionate. It gets everybody we have on here. And we don't ever come on and we don't ever bring a guest on and not support them or understand what they're saying. We honestly, we like having great conversations, and that's what we've always done. And it's what we'll always do.
You guys are great. I mean, it's fun to come on, and it's very refreshing to be able to have like an open, transparent conversation and talk about, how things could be better, why people don't take risks, why are we doing the same thing? And if we don't challenge each other, what are we doing?
Right.
That's
The
great.
idea is to help those people out there who want to be better, because there's a ton of them out there. They just don't know where to turn.
And give them some confidence. You know,
Right.
Tony, I think when you get on your tangents and you show your passion and I show my passion, I think what it does is it gives somebody an idea they had going and not knowing whether it would work or not. And it gives a little bit of confidence saying, hey, if this guy's this passionate about it, it's got to have something, it's got to work.
And
And I didn't
sometimes
know
you
that.
have to be willing to say no. Like I've said no.
Right.
If you call
Yeah.
and talk about how big the database is or how many leads or this or that, I'm probably going to say, I don't think we're going to be a fit.
Yeah. I love that. That right there. Hey, you know what? We're out of time, and that's the best way to end it right there. I said it before on I don't know how many times. If you're not a good fit, say no. But sometimes, a lot of times, I know, hey, this guy over here, I know he can be great for you. You know
That's
what I mean? And that right there keeps your reputation where it needs to be and
Yep.
keeps things moving forward. No matter what you have going on, you can keep your name right because this is the biggest small industry there is. And if you can get your name right and keep things going, you're just fine.
If you're looking for drivers, go see Beth at Drive
We'll
My
see
Way.
that.
DriveMyWay.com, 1-800-411-5840.
5840.
Let's get the
411.
411. Give us a call.
Thanks for coming on, Beth. I really appreciate you.
Having
We'll
us.
add her on LinkedIn. Follow her, guys. Reach out to her.
Thanks, guys. You have a great rest of the week. Enjoy
Thanks.
it. Take
Thanks.
care. Keep
See you again.
talking.